Hey guys, it's Mr. Creepy here. Sorry for the delay in uploads. I've been very busy with exams and things like that, but I'll try and get some more videos out more frequently for you guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this one, and remember, you're never truly alone. Number 1. In June of last year, I moved to a borough of South London in order to pursue a master's degree in the city. I moved to this specific borough because my boyfriend works there, so it was convenient for him. Plus, it's cheaper than living in the very centre. The area isn't great, not the worst, but definitely not great. It's the type of neighbourhood where you walk past a bar at 9:30 AM on the way to class, and people are already drunk. And then when you come back home at 5 PM, they're still there. It's the type of place where junkies hang around with their Staffordshires and catcall you through their rotting teeth. Of course, there are some generally nice, normal people in the neighbourhood, but where I live, which is directly on the high street, you run into some odd characters, to say the least. My first encounter with this creep happened when I was walking back from school. It was summer, and I was wearing a kimono. I'm 23 years old, 22 at the time that this first started, blonde, with an hourglass shape, so I'm fairly used to getting attention from random men on the street. Normally people just make a comment or a noise and then go about their day. I don't usually respond, and the situation, albeit somewhat annoying, regulates itself. Not this time, however. I'm listening to music, and suddenly I see a guy walking in step with me. This man is about 5'10", slim, black with a cropped afro, wears big 80s glasses, and is in his 20s, and is wearing both a camouflage shirt and pants as a matching set. He makes a motion for me to take out my headphones, and our conversation went something like this. "Oh hey, I like your robe, or what do you call it? A kimono," I say politely, but somewhat dismissively. "Where did you get it?" he asks, walking in step with me. "Don't remember," I say, trying to blow him off and getting confused about why we're discussing fashion together. "Oh, okay. Yeah, you're a classy girl. Can I get your number? Do you like clubbing?" "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." He ignores my statement completely, still walking in step with me. He continues, "I have a cousin. He owns this club. We could go together sometime if you want." "No, sorry, I have a boyfriend." "Oh, I bet you're just saying that to get rid of me." I force a taunt smile and continue walking. At this point, he has stopped following me, which is good, because I don't want him to follow me home. I glance back to make sure he's not following me, and I notice he's now cornered some other girl. Wow, what a creep. I move on with my day. About a week later, I'm walking towards the grocery store when I see a shadow in my periphery. I turn, and it's him. He motions me to take out my headphones again, and I do. I'm confused, as I've already told him I have a boyfriend, but I figure he may have forgotten me. "I like your sunglasses. What brand are they?" I laugh internally, thinking that this must be his smooth opening 9, and this was the second time he complimented something I was wearing. "Thanks. So, do you like clubbing?" "I met you last week. I still have a boyfriend." we met last week?" he asked incredulously. Incredulously. "Yes, right outside Nando's." I don't think so. I would have remembered a fine girl like you." "Right. Sorry, I have to go." "Where are you from?" He asks this because he notices my North American accent, which is very uncommon to hear around these parts, and I tell him I'm Canadian. I figure that he would remember me now, as to my knowledge. I'm the only North American girl in the area. I like Canadian girls. Cringe. "Okay, I have to go." At this, he stops following me and walks the other way. Maybe 2 weeks go by, and at this point, I've told my boyfriend about the guy. He gets mildly annoyed, but figures the guy would have given up after being rejected twice in the span of a week. One night, we were coming home from central London, walking from the train station back home. In front of us, I noticed that guy, wearing the same army outfit combo. I indicate that this is the man that was bothering me, so my boyfriend would know what he looked like. Funnily enough, he's following another girl and giving her the "my cousin owns a nightclub" spiel. I roll my eyes, and my boyfriend and I share a giggle to indicate how pathetic this all is. The girl was completely ignores him and looks at her phone, and eventually he loses interest and walks away. A couple more weeks go by. I'm going to the post office to post a package, and I feel a hand on my shoulder. It's him. "Slow down," he says, laughing. This time he's wearing a blue bomber jacket with a sort of phoenix embroidered on it. At this point, I'm incredibly annoyed because he's approaching me again, and also because he's touched me. "We have met before. I have a boyfriend," I say, clutching my package. "Nah, I would have remembered you." Now, I'm not sure whether this guy was joking, or whether he really had that bad of a memory. I don't claim to be so pivotal of a figure that any stranger would remember me, but surely, after speaking with the guy twice, he would have had some recollection. "So, do you like clubbing?" "Let me guess, you have a cousin who owns a nightclub? It's called..." "Yeah, how do you know?" "Because we've spoken before. Look, I have a boyfriend, and I don't want you to follow me again. When you see me, do not approach me, because I will always say no." He doesn't say anything to this, and I look him deep in the eyes so that he would remember my face. At this point, he's walked in step with me to the post office, so I turn to go inside. As I do, he grabs my hand. I turn to face him, and he's giving me this predatory, over-the-top, lecherous stare. "Do you have any single friends for me then?" I'm really unsettled by his energy, and more so that the guy would be so obtuse, as if I would put any of my friends in that situation. "No," I muster, and head inside. He lingers at the doorway of the post office, but eventually walks away. I tell my boyfriend about this, and at this point, he's angry. He offers to talk to the guy, as he says he often sees him on the way to work. According to him, every time he sees him, he's harassing some other girl I figure this guy has way too much time on his hands, and I wonder if he does anything besides hitting on random women in his spare time. In the following months, I'm approached by him a few more times. Each time, he gives me the spiel about his cousin owning the club, and each time, he claims he does not remember me, and even comments on my accent, asking where I'm from. At this point, I do not respond, but he still talks to me and walks in step with me until he realizes that I'm not going to speak, and he walks away. Sometimes, I kid you not, he walks across the street and blocks another girl in her path directly after striking out with me. I figure this guy is either high on drugs or mentally ill, but probably a combination of both. I'm not sure if his inability to remember me is some tactic or if he really has no clue that we've spoken many times. I decide to get the police involved, as it got to the point where I would have to stress about walking on the other side of the street for fear of running into him. No, he was not violent, but his energy and mannerisms indicated that he was unstable. And yes, he had touched me a few times, usually to block my path, which is unacceptable. The police come and take a statement, and although they are sympathetic, they say there's not much they can do unless I have this guy's name, photo, or phone number so that they can identify him. The officer even tells me to pretend to be interested in order to get his number so that I could forward it to the police station, and, to say the least, I was very uncomfortable with that idea and decided not to do that. The same day, I'm walking home from the grocery store with heavy bags and turn onto my street. I'm on a slight downward slope and I hear a "Hey!" coming from the top of the street. I turn and it's him. "No!" I shout, as I was very near to my house and didn't want him to know where I live. "Don't come near me! I'm not interested." "No? I can't come and talk to you?" he shouts back. "No! Stay away!" He lingers at the top of the slope for a while, and I stay in place, as to continue walking would reveal where I live. Eventually, he sees another girl and follows her until he's out of sight. Similar occurrences happen on and off for the next few months. Sometimes I ignore him. Sometimes I verbally communicate that I'm not interested. Every time he claims not to remember me. Then I decided to call the police again after another, more disturbing incident. I was walking towards the gym, and as I was turning a corner, I almost bumped into that guy. At first, I didn't really clue in that it was him, but then I looked and I realized who it was. I guess he took my looking at him as a sign that I was checking him out. I walked faster, and I turned around to see that if he was following me or not. He wasn't. Oh God, I thought, figuring he had better things to do with his morning than follow me. I walk for a good 10 minutes, looking back every now and then. When I'm confident that he's gone, I relax and walk at my leisure. Then, I hear fast footsteps from behind me. I turn around, and this guy is running towards me. He either followed me discreetly for a few blocks, or he guessed my path and ran to catch up with me. "Hey, you going to the gym?" he shouts, looking at my gym clothes. "You don't need to work on that body. It looks gorgeous to me." At this point, I'm sprinting, trying to get away. "Hey, I gave you a compliment. Don't be rude." This guy is faster than me, and he catches up and puts his arm out to block me. I'm so mad at this point, I look him in the eyes and say, "If you bother me again, I will call the police." "The police? I don't even know you. When have I bothered you?" I can't reason with a lunatic, so I tell him, "Remember my face this time. Leave me alone." He doesn't follow me to the gym. I call the police and they tell me that there's not much they can do, as he hasn't assaulted me. Right, because it has to get to that point before it's valid, eh? But they acknowledge that this behaviour is unacceptable. I figure that I would try and get an identifying photo next time. Weeks go by and there's no encounter. I feel good. Maybe he's finally got the message. On a cold March day, I walk up to the main station, which is about 15 minutes from my house. Fuck! He's lingering on the stairs that led up to it. He has that wild eyes that seem to be searching for girls, any girl. He spots me and springs into action. "Nice day, isn't it?" he asked in a way seems very rehearsed. Also, it wasn't a nice day. It was cold and grey. I don't answer. "Nice day, isn't it?" he repeats louder. I get my Oyster card out and walk quickly towards the turnstiles. I assume he doesn't have a ticket, so I could be safe as soon as I cross them. "Nice day." I cut him off. I'm shaking. I'm so upset. "I've met you a million times. I've told you that I'm not interested. What is wrong with you?" Without a beat, he says, "That's rude, innit? I've never spoken to you in my life." Right, I'm the crazy and unreasonable one. I call the police and tell them what happened, as I figure that that station would have had surveillance cameras that would have captured him harassing me in the act. This could give them the fodder they need to get, at least give him a warning. After a few days, they call me back and tell me that the station doesn't have any outside cameras filming the entrance. I feel hopeless. Of course, my boyfriend is aware of all of this, and he gets increasingly angry with every encounter. Every morning, my boyfriend gets an energy drink from the corner store before work. This time, as he's paying, he notices that guy, wearing the same army combo get-up, into the store. He puts a couple of pounds on the counter to pay, and turns to face the creep. "I need to talk to you," he says angrily. The creep gets visibly agitated and shifty and says, "No, I don't want to talk to you," and runs out of the store. The shop owner informs my boyfriend that this guy comes in all the time and steals merchandise. He also tries to pay for things by eating a chocolate bar at the till and saying, "I'll pay you later." He has been kicked out of the store many times, but the shop owner never really involved the police, as apparently the process for incriminating petty criminals is complicated, and he would have to close the business temporarily. I was banking on the fact that he would have a record, but without a name, it was hard to find out. My most recent encounter with him happened about a month ago. I was walking home from the station, and I noticed the guy walking in step with me. This time, I decided not to freak out. I wanted to play along with him, without indicating too much interest, so I could get a name and photo. He starts by saying, "I'm in a band with my cousin, and we're looking for members. Do you want to join?" Right, that's totally believable. As he's speaking, I subtly hold my phone up and take a good picture of him. "No thanks, I don't really have any musical talent," I tell him. "So, do you like clubbing?" he asks. I ignore him. and ask, "So, what's your name?" "I'm Marlin. What's yours, gorgeous?" I give him a fake name and make a mental note of his name, which I remember because it's the same as Marlon Brando. So now I have a photo and a name. The police are reviewing everything, but I feel that even with this, they are not going to be able to do much, given their track record. Although he hasn't bothered me since this day, I still don't want it to happen again. I'm definitely going to move at some point, but for the time being, how do I deal with this? How can I ensure that he remembers me and stays away? Am I doing something wrong, or am I not doing enough? Does he actually not remember me? Or is this some lame tactic? Thanks for reading this. It's therapeutic to share with others. Number 2. I'm a public defence attorney from a small town in the Midwest. I won't say where or who I represent. My client has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I'm hard pressed to believe he's guilty of the things he's accused of. He's asked me to pass on this statement, which I'm doing here with anonymity. All I asked is that you recognise the case. Please do not share who he is or where he's from. I feel obligated to share this story, but I pray that he gets the help he needs. Up until very recently, we were subscribed to the local print newspaper. I imagine I was their last customer. There was something enjoyable about it, an anachronistic way. Sure, you can get the news from Facebook, like everyone else does, but where's the fun in that? And the kid who delivered my paper would give me a few extra coupon inserts on Sunday. He had nowhere else to deliver them anyway. It had become a ritual for me. I'm a morning person. I wake up at 4 a.m. most days. Coffee in hand, I'd head out to the porch to enjoy the morning air and wait for the paper delivery. By the time the sun came up, I'd know what was going on in the world. It was my moment of zen. Thinking back, that Sunday was like most. I sat on the porch, waiting for the Paperboy. I waved when he rolled on past on his bicycle, and he returned in a different nod. This kid's got an arm. The paper landed right at my feet. By the time I bent over to pick it, he had turned the corner and was gone. The scent of strong black coffee filled the crisp morning air. The sun made its way above the horizon, illuminating light fog covering our neighbourhood. Aside from the sound of crickets, the world was still. I unfolded the paper with a flourish and paused. Was I dreaming? The headline article had a photo of me and my wife, black and white, but real as life. We were smiling in the park. I recognised it immediately. It was from last summer at an outdoor concert. The headline read, "2 dead in murder-suicide." I stared at the headline, slack-jawed for the better part of a minute. It made me dizzy. I almost didn't notice when the heavy door behind me opened, hinges squealing in protest. I turned and saw my wife there, half asleep. She stared at me, a worried look on her face. "Are you okay? You look upset," she said. I looked back at the paper. The photo showed President Trump waving to a small crowd. The headline was about his recent press conference. "I'm fine. Tired, I guess." "Did you want more coffee? I'm making another pot." She smiled and walked back into the house, closing the door behind her. I checked the paper again, then once more, cover to cover. and no photo of me. I tossed it in the trash. Had I been dreaming? Maybe I fell asleep for a moment. The door opening must have startled me awake, and I never realized that I dozed off. Simple explanations, right? I was a little less enthusiastic to get back into my routine of waiting for the paper in the morning after that. I'd sit inside the door with the lights off. There was no mistaking the sound of rubber tires on wet cement as the paperboy rode up the block. Seconds later, I'd hear a wet thud as the paper landed on the porch. That sound always made me think of meat falling onto a cutting board. It wasn't natural. I'd retrieve the paper and leave it on the table, unread. I'd let my wife read it first. I'm not saying that I believe in the supernatural, but I'm also not interested in taking chances. Once she'd finished with it, I'd allow myself to read the news. Generally, I'd stick to the finance section. Weeks passed, and I realized how silly I was being. I missed the relaxing calm of my exposure to the outdoors. Sunday morning came, and I found myself on the porch, enjoying my coffee. The paperboy crept up the street on his bicycle. I waved. He didn't. His eyes were cold and dark in the twilight of the early morning. "Special delivery," he said. The paper landed at my feet with a splat. I watched him make his way around the corner. He never broke eye contact. Fingers trembling, I picked up the newspaper. I turned it over in my hands a few times, but they refused to open it. I fumbled with the bag and the paper slid out, landing face down on a damp wood. The moist newsprint felt like it would disintegrate. Part of me wished it would. Without wanting to, I forced myself to turn it over. The same cheery photo greeted me. 2 dead in murder-suicide. The article showed Monday's date. I strained to swallow. A knot of unease the size of an apple caught in my throat. My eyes darted across the page as I forced myself to skim the long article. The details were gruesome, but not out of the ordinary, considering the headline. The story said I stabbed my wife, eviscerated her. Then the blade turned on myself. A neighbour said they heard screaming and called the cops. They claimed they found both of us dead in the garage. The paper fell from my grip and landed on the cold decking again. I slumped back into my chair. Was I going mad? I checked it again, and the headline was just the same. A thought popped into my head. I had to show my wife. If she saw it, then it wasn't me. It was someone at the newspaper with a sick sense of humour. But if it was another article about how people regret voting for the president, I'd know that I needed help. Even when faced with the unexpected, I'm irrational to a fault. Grabbing the paper, I ran into the house. She wasn't in the living room or the den. I entered the kitchen and called out to her. "I'm in the garage," she said. Her voice strained and sounded distant, despite only having a thin wooden door between us. Forcing the garage door open, I stepped through, holding the paper in front of me. The air was warm, despite the cool temperatures outside, and thick with dust. This sounds crazy, but what does the headline say? My eyes remained on the back of the folded newspaper, glued to the inverted image of us. A strange sound caused me to pause. I heard it again, a singular splat in the otherwise silent room, something viscous and the wet striking the floor. I slowly lowered the paper and saw her standing there, holding a butcher knife from the kitchen. The ragged gash in her midsection wept crimson, threatening to tear wider at the edges where her intestines peeked through. and attempted to escape. Blood and the rivulets of her arm falling off her elbow and landing against the floor in thick drops. She was in the middle of making the second slice across her abdomen when the paper fell from my hand. I tried to talk, to move, anything. I was frozen in place. Electricity spread over my skin, leaving behind a cold sweat. I stared, wide-eyed, jaw clenched. For what felt like hours, panic gripped me like a vice, squeezing until black crept in at the edges of my vision. Smiling, she continued to slice through the tough layers of skin and muscle, exposing more of her digestive tract. Why? Was all I could manage. My tongue felt like sandpaper against the dry insides of my mouth. She continued to smile and cut. The fugue subsided long enough to notice that I had to do something. I ran to her and tried to grab the knife. She wouldn't let it go, and in the struggle I managed to cut myself across the forearm. Once I was able to get the knife away, I laid her down on the concrete floor. I tried to keep the viscera from forcing its way out further. The cuts were so deep and the damage was so severe that I couldn't stop the bleeding. She was dying in my arms with that stupid, empty grin on her face. I sat there, holding her until I saw the red and blue lights flashing from the window of the garage. The police found me with my hands entwined in my deceased's wife's organs, next to the knife that had caused the damage. They didn't ask what happened. They subdued me and dragged me away. Later in court, their experts claimed the defensive wounds on my arm told the whole story. I tried to tell them what happened. They said there was no newspaper in my garage. They think I'm crazy. They've left me locked in this goddamn padded cell for weeks. They keep me sedated. My lawyer managed to convince them to lay off long enough for me to write this statement. I've begged him to get it out there. I want everyone to know that I am not crazy. I didn't kill my wife. But people believe everything they see in the news. One of the orderlies is a sadistic prick and constantly tells me I deserve the chair for what I did. He brought me the paper from the day after my wife died. The headline read, "One dead in attempted murder-suicide." They even used a photo of us from the park. Number 3. Maybe I should start with the fact that his eyes were a shade reminiscent of orange flames, strangely alluring, a pool of gold, reminiscent of the warm summer nights and sunsets, of worry-free nights and comfortable coziness. But that was not the case. He had been here for just over an hour, and it was obvious the restaurant supplies were going downhill fast. There wasn't much to cook anymore, and the other patrons of the diner had all disappeared, some from the lack of food, and the others from a primal fear of this strange creature, gulping down bones, anything that could be eaten. Just watching him brought a feeling of nausea to my esophagus, muscles clenching as I watched dish after dish being inhaled into a never-emptying void within his body, or whatever could be his body. Steaks, fish, sushi, he was devouring it all. An all-you-can-eat buffet would have you serving yourself, helping yourself to the table laden with goodies. But after the loss of my fellow servitors left Pinky, the others were obliged to fulfill his requests for fear of losing a foot, or maybe even a hand. Once they saw what he could do with an entire plate piled high with steaks. At his insistence, we served his table, and took away the empty dishes, soundless, quiet, meek. No one wanted to incite his anger. The ovens were screaming, and the chefs were working overtime to sedate the beast that took the form of an innocent-looking human customer. The boss tried to make him leave, but one of his hands got too close. It was a clean cut at the wrist, and I had torn a napkin off the silver serving tray to wrap his stump of a wrist in the bandage. The customer's appetite was insatiable, and with his slender, almost wiry frame, had finished our entire restaurant stock. The chefs were making a ruckus in the kitchen now, scouring the cabinets for any more butter, any more cheese. From my view near the kitchen window, I saw the deteriorating amount of ingredients they had left, and start to shake, almost involuntary in fear. He had taken a hand off the boss and Maria's pinky. When we couldn't serve him any more, what would happen? The customer was almost baby-faced, young, barely scraping the surface of adulthood, but voracious. Even human flesh and bone were child's play to this monster. I served the food as quickly as I could, with all the calmness I could muster. His twinkling eyes caught mine for a moment, and I smiled, pretending nothing was wrong. Then he just was a normal customer. The customer smiled in return every time, before he went back to inhaling the dishes. Then there was no more food to cook. The 3 chefs in our establishment stepped out of the kitchen, seemingly calm. They didn't see our hands shaking, and the missing limbs some of us sustained. They were in the kitchen an entire time. They wouldn't know how bad the situation was outside. Maria grasped my hand with her napkin-wrapped hand, the bloody, sticky cloth against my palm. No more food came, and the customer began to scream, clutching at his throat, his stomach, his back, in pain. It looked so genuine, and even if anyone wanted to question him if he was alright, if he needed medical attention, none of us could pluck up enough courage to approach him. Eventually, the cramping stopped, and he stood up again, fluid motions and smooth ascension betraying the obviously excruciating hurt earlier. Like his eyes, his voice was tinged with something I couldn't place. Persuasive, something out of this world. "Feed me." "There's nothing left to eat. No more food, sir." The customer, with a wicked smile, had lunged from his spot in less than a heartbeat, sinking razor-sharp teeth into the head chef's neck, over and over, gnawing at the flesh, and ripping it from the bone, slamming the chef's head onto the ground to keep him still, as they sunk his monstrosities of teeth into the poor man's throat, over and over again. A feral, inhuman growl emanating from both throat and stomach as he ingested the rest of the man's body, right before our eyes. The liver was gulped down, leaving only the still beating heart by the time he was done with the flesh and innards, lapping at the remaining blood on the organ, before shoving it down our throat. That was almost like a black hole. A sickly, cruel smile, dripping with crimson, crazed, almost demonic-looking eyes, reflected in the light, was a sight to behold, yet to fear. My legs were frozen, and so were my arms, but as his golden orange eyes scoured our staff for the next victim, I felt a sudden thawing, and I twitched my fingers, backing away slowly, just as he took down another man, this time my boss. I knew I should run, maybe hide. No, hiding won't do me any good. The others stood stock in their places, almost as if a spell.